Good day all. Once again, we are gunning to Old Trafford, and as you guys can see, we have a special guest on the hot seat today. But today we're not calling it the hot seat, we're calling it, Ibrahim, the cool seat. Welcome, Uncle Yunus, and my co-host Ibrahim. Guys, fascinating afternoon. One of our best segments yet, the all-time Manchester United top 11. But before we get into it, Ibrahim, bring us in, please.
Yeah, sure. And I think, coolness personified, we said it earlier. Earlier on, we had a bit of a boo-boo in terms of our recording. And Abdullah and myself were all over the show, and Uncle Yunus brought some calm to the situation. So, the coolness, like we said. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you haven't already, hit the bell notification so that you know when our content drops. Uncle Yunus, someone that we really looked up to our entire lives, someone who's been a massive inspiration and mentor, not only to us, but I think to the community, and done a lot for our small community, Roshni, small town in South Africa. So Uncle Yunus is a teacher by profession, was a football coach as well during his teaching days. Uncle Yunus is a avid and lifelong Manchester United fan. Massive into photography. I'm part of a group with Uncle Yunus as well. So we had a bit of a unity football tournament a couple of weeks ago, and in our town. And Uncle Yunus was there taking the photos, and it came out amazing.
Brilliant stuff.
And also Uncle Yunus was mayor in the Vaal district. So someone that speaks for himself. All of these accolades. Uncle Yunus, today's session we're going to talk about your all-time 11. But before we get into it, I like to pick your brain on a few things. And to all our viewers, they know I'm a firm Glazers out. How would you say it? Activist or supporter, whatever it is. So, Uncle Yunus, your thoughts on the Glazers? They came in. Obviously, there's an issue around the horse with Sir Alex Ferguson and the previous owners. and that got them into selling Manchester United. The Glazers then came in. Sir Alex Ferguson did well to paper over the cracks, him and David Gill, as a team. Yeah. But since they both, and they left at the same time, which I think, was not ideal for Manchester United. But since then, United have not been able to hit the heights, even though they has been spending. Your thoughts on the Glazers and what needs to change, either from the ownership style or from the ownership altogether?
Well, I mean, like you, I'm a Glazers out activist. I mean, I think it's a tragedy what has happened to Man United. A club that obviously was an elite club, one of the best in the world. Now finding itself riddled with debt, unable to compete with the biggest and wealthiest clubs in the world. It's true that the Glazers have spent. I mean, if you take the numbers, the net spend, they have spent money. But I think there's more to a successful club than just spending money. Yes. Because there are other elements of the club. It's creating that right environment for success, etc. And I think that's where the Glazers have shown to be very, very poor owners. Too many commercial decisions have been made. They've appointed managers that I think in the past have been managers that wouldn't cost too much of, they won't rock the boat too much. Mm-hmm. Ten Hag, however, I see him as somebody that will stand his ground. So that's a departure. I think perhaps they've sat down and they've looked at the implications of United falling away from the top clubs and what financial implications that would result in. And well, the one thing you have to say about the Glazers, they're probably good business people, and they've probably looked at this and said, we can't risk the club falling too far behind. It won't make business sense anymore. So maybe they've taken a decision that let's step back and bring in somebody like Ten Hag and give him the freedom to look after the footballing side of things. And there are some indications that might be true now, but it's still too early. We have to wait and see.
Sure.
But I still think that the Glazers are bad news for Manchester United. There are other wealthy people that have bought into football clubs, but they've invested in the club.
Yes.
They've put money in the club. It's not just about taking money out of the club. And United needs huge investment moving forward. I mean, the Old Trafford is falling apart. There's going to be a need for a new stadium. You're looking at anything like 2 to 3 billion for a world-class stadium. If you do it in the next few years, because there's escalating cost all the time. So if somebody wants to buy into Manchester United, it's not just the purchase price. It's the investment that's going to be needed.
The way forward, yeah.
So I'm not very supportive of the Glazers.
Yeah, this T-shirt here.
Yes, the green and
it's a perfect one, to talk around the Glazers. The green and gold Glazers out.
That's
and
the
I think
protest.
that's something that we always look to. And you mentioned something really important there. It's not just about the purchase price, but around everything else that's going on in Manchester United. And obviously whatever is happening with Cristiano Ronaldo, but there were reports that, Carrington looked exactly the same when he came now in 2021, like he did when he left in 2009.
Precisely.
2009, 2010, So the training for Carrington was once upon a time one of the best stadiums, best training facilities around, state of the art. Old Trafford was one of the best stadia that was around. But it seems like that's been dropping. And with all of that, it looks like there could be massive issues coming Manchester United.
I think so, there are. And you've got to think about what the competition are doing. You have, down the road, you have Manchester City that have built world-class, state-of-the-art facility.
Yes.
And not just the stadium. I mean, it's everything else that they're doing in Manchester.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. And, and now you have Spurs having built this magnificent stadium. And of course, Arsenal have a fairly new stadium, etc. So.
And also, Uncle Yunus, myself and Ibrahim also were speaking about what it does for the surrounding living area, the municipality around it. Yeah. Manchester City has just uplifted the Manchester community
Greater Manchester
to a different level. I mean, Liverpool, the first thing when Klopp came in, he started building and really making a training ground state of the art. I mean, if you can train on a state of the art pitch, you're going to play state of the art. So I mean, Manchester City as well. So big work for Manchester United in a couple of years coming ahead.
And then before last question, I'm sorry if we're boring you, but
not at all.
I mean, just before we get into that question, we did do a segment previously, and we dropped the links in. One around the Glazers out, and that entire model. Mohamed Shahid Abdul came in and unpacked that entire American ownership model, not just from a Glazers perspective, but from an American mindset perspective. And we also did a stadium tour of Anfield and the Etihad. So good to see and get some views on those stadiums. Something that United were always famed for, especially under Sir Alex Ferguson and ex-Liverpool defender turned pundit Henson said you can't win anything with kids. And the class of '92 went on to win everything that they could possibly win, and that was down to Eric Harrison, helping the development come through. Nicky Butt was looking like he was doing something good, but obviously he fell out with the ownership model. Is this new? We're seeing Garnacho coming through. We're seeing the likes of Iqbal, Shoretire, and even Savage. His father also was part of the class of '92. Do you see United's academy doing anything good over the next couple of years, or is it that the Glazers have really ignored or neglected that area of Manchester United?
I think it's too early to tell whether the youth policy under Ten Hag is going to be what we're hoping it would be. I think it's a bit early. There are positive signs. The young players that you mentioned, the fact that Garnacho has been starting to get playing time, those are all positive signs that he's willing to give opportunities to players that have potential. So those are promising signs. But the youth system is much bigger than just that. We see the few young players that come through, that break through into the first team. But there's a huge system that has to be in place, that works well, that finds the talent and brings the talent through. But smart owners will invest in that, because if you have another class of '92 can you imagine the amount of money you'd be saving?
Exactly.
You know, so it makes sense
Yes.
to have a good policy. But let's wait and see it. I think it's early days.
Awesome stuff.
I mean, Van Gaal brought in Rashford.
Yeah.
And I mean, Rashford, they saved in paying on a player like him.
Exactly.
I mean, today's market,
Big
it would be
money.
what, anything over 60 million pounds to bring in a
Yeah.
player like Marcus Rashford.
He just needs to find consistency. Or else,
Exactly.
because he was driving me crazy.
Yeah, consistent.
But I think a lot of off-field issues also, injuries and
Yes,
stuff.
true,
And it looks
true.
like under Ten Hag, he's
No, he's looking
starting to
much
find
better.
his form.
He's
you know.
looking
And then
much
just
better.
quickly, we got to do this. So, Uncle Yunus, we have nicknames for the two star boys from Manchester and Arsenal.
Okay.
So the real star boy was Marcus
Marcus
Rashford,
Rashford.
and we call him just Fanas. You know, just Fanas,
yeah.
like Mfana Footy, but
Yeah.
half. And Bakayo Saka is Mfana Footy.
Ah,
So we've given them
Bring a bit of a South African-
our South
That's our
African
South
flavor.
African spin.
Right. So guys, remember, you heard it first. Getting to Old Trafford, Marcus Rashford, Fanas,
Yeah.
and Bakayo Saka, Mfana
Mfana
Footy. That's okay.
So I hope Fanas doesn't drive me crazy.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Brilliant. Abdul, maybe you want to bring
Yes,
us in
okay.
on the top 11.
So,
I'm just going to
sure.
pop off
Yes,
quickly.
yes, please, Ibrahim. Sorry about that. So, Uncle Yunus, we're going to do your all-time Manchester United top 11, alright? You obviously going to tell us what formation you want to, but I think those days was I don't know, flat 4-4-2. You can go with we had Uzair Baba,
Yes.
and Uzair Baba, Ibrahim was saying, okay, so we're going to do a 4-4-2. Uzair tells us no, he's going with a 4-2-3-1. So a very fancy formation. So so Uncle Yunus, we start from the back. You'll give us your centre back partnership, your right back, your left back, and I'm looking so
And we
forward
work
to
work our way
and we
to
work
the
our way to our strikers.
Sure.
And then obviously your big manager that's going to manage this fantastic 11, and yeah, we take it from there.
And I think just as a disclaimer to the fans, this doesn't need to be the best Manchester United team. It's the Manchester United players that you loved watching and growing up with, whether it was back in the day or the current crop of players, whatever you like. So, Uncle Yunus, just to start off, what formation would you like to? Because I think that will be pivotal for the type of players you bring in as well.
Yeah, sure. So you have to indulge in a bit of fantasy now because
Yes,
because
yes.
you're picking
Love it.
players from different eras,
Yeah.
and there's no telling how they would have played together if it actually happened,
Amazing,
But
yes.
that's the beauty of this type of a segment in that you can indulge in a bit of fantasy,
100%.
Amazing.
Well, I mean, the 4-4-2, that is what I would go with, simply because I'm mixing players, from different eras, and maybe it's a bit easier and simpler. Once you start with the more sophisticated formations,
Yes, then you can
then you
bring
need
it.
to be a little bit more clear and more specific. So, I mean, I would go with a 4-4-2 for the purposes of this type of a segment.
Okay,
you know.
perfect. Lovely. So we're
Ibrahim,
locking in a
quick
4-4-2.
one. We're locking in, but Uncle Yunus, I don't know if you know, but this year, and the fans know, this is our famous black book.
The famous black
So once you're going to talk to us,
You're gonna record
Uncle
it.
Yunus, we're going to record, and once we note it in the black book, it stays in the black book. Okay, so guys, the black book is out, as you guys can see. Martin Odegaard, the conductor, his pen is out as well. We call him the conductor,
The
of the
conductor,
orchestra,
he is.
right? So yeah, his pen is out, and Uncle Yunus, we're ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Uncle Yunus, again, just one more thing. Any player that you bring in, just a small snippet of why is in there and the memory that maybe comes to mind for you. So we're going to go with a flat 4-4-2, and we're going to start off at the back. United had a wealth of goalkeepers that we can choose. In terms of maybe
Well,
not
we've had lots of disasters also.
lots of disasters.
Yes.
A certain.
Barthez,
For me, the worst was Mark Bosnich. In my era, that one really finished.
Massimo Taibbi.
Ooh, Taibbi as well. Yes.
You know what I loved of Barthez? He was always off his line, and Thierry Henry used to chip him all like that.
And
Did
he
you
was short.
remember? He was short. He was always off his line.
He went into racing after he retired.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did like
Good for him.
Formula 2 racing.
No, okay, great.
So, brilliant. So, Uncle Yunus, your goalkeeper that's going to marshal this entire team.
I think it just comes down to two goalkeepers. It's really a choice between Edwin van der Sar and Peter Schmeichel. And I must tell you, I was devastated when Peter Schmeichel decided to play for Man City.
Oh, yes.
And at one point I thought I will never forgive him. He's not going to ever make my top 11. He must rather sit on the bench. I would rather put Edwin van der Sar. I mean, Van der Sar was technically probably as good, if not better, than
Yeah.
Schmeichel.
And he came at a time.
Yeah.
He was a bit older.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
solidified the team,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And he was key to our success.
I mean, I just hold him in such high regard. But I think just the sheer presence of Schmeichel, I mean, he had the way he commanded the area and the influence that he had on the mentality of the rest of the team.
Yeah.
There's simply no way to...
Like goalkeeper before his time, I think he modernized the way a goalkeeper
Yeah.
has to be.
So I think that's an easy one.
Okay,
So,
perfect. So
Peter Schmeichel.
and that's in line with what the same goalkeeper that I chose in my top 11.
I think.
But I mean, really, why he played for City, I mean, I don't know.
Hey, man, that was a sword.
That was a solo.
Okay, but I think it would be fair.
Yes.
Because Uncle Yunus was taught, I think we put. Could we already put Edwin van der Sar on the bench?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I think that would be
Absolutely.
a brilliant
Yeah.
second
because you get
goalkeeper to
5
fall
subs,
on.
so we definitely
So we're going to already put Edwin van der Sar. I think
It's a
there's
good
no argument
understanding.
there. So Edwin van der Sar will be the number 2, right?
Yeah.
Van der Sar, brilliant.
So then, Uncle Yunus, what we normally do is our centre back, we like to use them as a partnership because I think any centre back you need that complementing attributes. And I think that's what United was struggling with Maguire and Lindelof is because they were very similar in pace, their reading of the game, and they struggled. And now we've got someone like Martinez and Varane that really bring that they
yes.
complement each other. So they don't need to have played together, but just a pairing that you think would play together well.
Well, that's the. I mean, when you're in this fantasy land, you must be able to break the rules a bit. So I mean, the pairings of Pallister and Bruce and Ferdinand and Vidic. I mean, those stand out.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, there's no question that you could pick any of those two. I mean, it's very hard to separate them. I mean, I watched Pallister and Bruce play, and so I mean, having seen them play, I rate them very highly. But this is one area where I lie in bed and think sometimes, what if there could be mixing players from different eras.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
And so I'm going to probably break away from the norm.
And
here.
today's a fantasy afternoon.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I would have loved to have seen. Well, firstly, from those 4 players, I mean, I would pick Pallister.
yes.
I've watched Pallister play.
Beautiful.
He was, I don't know, 6'3" or something, but he was deceptively quick.
Big boy.
I understand in training. Even the speedy wingers and that couldn't keep up with him in sprints.
Wow.
He was. I mean, you wouldn't when you looked at him and you watched him on the field, you wouldn't think that he was quick.
He's so quick.
But he was extremely quick. I mean, his reading of the game. He was strong in the air. He had a calmness of mind, etc. So he would certainly be my first choice. And the other player. I mean, this might come as a surprise, but I absolutely adored Paul McGrath.
Brilliant.
Paul McGrath for me was, but just everything about Paul McGrath. Look, he had his off-the-field problems. I mean, he has written candidly about his problems with alcohol and his off-the-field problems, etc. He was part of that drinking culture at United with Norman Whiteside and Brian Robson, and all those things. Didn't stop him from playing right up till the age of about 38. I mean, when he left Man United, he went to Aston Villa, and still went on to win the Player of the Year, the PFA Player of the Year,
Amazing.
Amazing.
But Paul
for
McGrath
defender,
for me
it's
was
amazing.
just an absolutely brilliant athlete, and I mean, if he were to play with somebody like Pallister, I mean, that would be a dream centre back pairing for me.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that mix.
Pallister,
And also, it's to all you younger fans. I think this is, the beauty of having Uncle Yunus here. So we can break away from the norms of what people in the younger generation are seeing, people in our generation were seeing, so that we get a nice mix of other players to understand what they could have brought to a Manchester United team. So that's it, Abdul. You're locking in Pallister and McGrath as that centre back pairing with Peter Schmeichel behind him.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Beautiful.
They say the
Can I
spine
just say
of a
something
team.
about Paul McGrath?
Yeah.
I mean, and he said this. I don't know whether it was for United or Villa, but they were playing. He was playing against Everton, and he had to mark Duncan Ferguson, and he won Player of the Match.
Oh, wow.
Right? I mean, but he then confessed that he was actually drunk for that entire time. I mean, he said, "Look, I mean, I
But
sneaked
Uncle
out
Yunus,
and
Ibrahim, Duncan Ferguson 9 out of 10 would have also been drunk. You know, Duncan just looks like that, but I love him. I mean, he's so passionate about everything. Duncan Ferguson, we love you, my man. But yeah,
it reminds me of Herschel Gibbs at one point. We won't get into it, but I mean, that's a story for the ages. So.
Duncan Ferguson, what a striker.
Yeah.
I liked him, loved him.
So awesome, Abdul, you logged it in.
I'm locking in. Beautiful.
Agreements, we're now going to go on to your left back and right backs. In our era, you know, there's only one right back that really popped up in my mind. But you tell us, Agreements, from what you watched.
Do you want to go with right back first or left back first?
Okay, let's go left back first. I'll give you the left back first because I think that's a more complicated one.
No, in fact, the right back is more complicated. And I'll tell you why. But let's go to the left back. I mean, for me, there's only two names really that are in contention. I mean, and that is Patrice Evra and Dennis Irwin.
Yes.
Right?
Had to be those two.
And you know, you sit and you think, I mean, Patrice Evra was wonderful going forward as well, but you know, Dennis Irwin was just so solid, so dependable, so reliable. I don't know if he'll make a great modern day fullback, right? Because in his era, fullbacks didn't venture up the field as much as they do now.
Yes.
But I would certainly go with Dennis
Irwin.
You know, I mean,
brilliant player.
I mean, just everything about him, Mr. Dependable.
100%.
You know.
And I think he was key also to Sir Alex Ferguson
Yeah.
building what he did at Manchester United, you know.
Yeah.
And we actually did a club the other day, and I was disappointed with Abdul because he was going in on an old Dennis Irwin, where Thierry Henry, you know, famously, you know, shouldered him off, flicked the ball up and lobbed it over Batis.
Yeah.
So, but Dennis Irwin,
as
a left back stepping up to take the penalties and free kicks for Manchester United.
He was great.
When you had other great players around him, just showed the type of mentality he had. Okay, now we're off to right back. You said a little bit more complicated.
More complicated. And I mean, I don't believe that Manchester United ever had a world-class right back.
I agree.
Because, I mean, if I take Dennis Irwin, if I take the centre-backs, Pallister, Schmeichel, I mean, they could have made a world 11, you know, in their era. But I know everybody will say, well, what about Gary Neville? But was Gary Neville? I loved Gary Neville. I think his passion, his commitment, his loyalty makes him a United legend. But was he of world-class quality? I don't think so. You know, I don't think he was at that level. Yeah. You know, but United have never had world-class right backs. I'm still waiting for a world-class right back, and it's not going to be.
Diego Dalot.
Although he's getting better.
No, he's doing well.
So by default, you know,
Gary Neville.
We'll have to go with Gary Neville.
Gary Neville, okay.
But by default, you know.
Neville gets out of us always. He's always there.
But
he has to be there.
But what Uncle Yunus is saying is something we also chatted about the other day. Was here to say, we'll be the first to say that Gary Neville was not the greatest right back.
So true.
But his partnership with David Beckham
was great.
At that time was amazing.
Yeah.
And he was key to what Ferguson was trying to do. And he's got the trophies to embed him as a United legend. But never a world class. He wouldn't make the top 11.
I mean, my backup for him on the bench would be somebody like Antonio Valencia.
Yes.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got our backline sorted. Abdul, if you want to just take us through the backline again.
Okay, so this is wow, what a back. We've got in the pole we've got Peter Schmeichel. Our two centre back pairing. Uncle Yunus, this is amazing. We've got Paul McGrath and Gary Pallister. Brilliant. On the right back we've got Gary Neville, and left back none other than Dennis Irwin. Brilliant stuff.
Brilliant stuff. So that takes out our backline. And you know that spine is really important.
Yeah.
So you've got your keeper, that's a rock. You've got a solid centre-back pairing. And now we're going to our centre mid, Uncle Yunus. So to carry on your spine, because you've gone for a flat 4-4-2, you're going for that standard two, holding midfielders. One that, predominantly sits back and one that's allowed to move forward a bit. Yeah. So who would be your ideal pairing in that and understanding each other in that play?
Well, the box to box would be Brian Robson.
Oh, yes.
Nice. Backs to box would be Brian. And the player to hang back a little bit would be Roy Keane.
Roy Keane has to make that team, right?
Love that. What a sense.
It's going to be interesting to see who makes your captain.
No, and it's very tough. I mean, it's tough for me to say that because remember, I'm a great admirer of Paul Scholes.
Yes.
But it means that Paul Scholes doesn't make that midfield.
Probably makes your bench.
Probably makes the bench.
Okay. Roy
Perfect
Keane,
stuff.
Brian Robson. What a midfield.
I mean, what a midfield pairing. I think that was a midfield that would scare a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it would.
Looking good.
I'll leave your right mid out for now.
Gonna go to the left.
Let's go to the left. United had some good left midfielders over the years. There's a few that pop up in mind. I mean, we had a certain Yori Cruyff as well.
Oh,
Johan Cruyff's son that played at
I
United.
remember Yodi.
Wow.
I mean, didn't do as well as his father did. But obviously, I mean, different expectations. So, Agulinas, your left midfielder, left winger.
So, I mean, the player that I would play, simply because of the contribution he would make as a midfielder, but also as a forward, would be George Best.
George Best.
Oh, Georgie. Ibrahim, you want to give us a bit of a turn there?
I mean, my
George Best.
all-time favorite
Amazing.
Manchester United player. And I mean, besides all the brilliant skill and the goals he could score and all of that, I mean, just people often overlook his work rate as a player, his ability to tackle. I mean, people don't often speak about just what a tenacious tackler he was. So George Best would defend from the front. If the opposition were in possession, I mean, he would be like a terrier going after players.
That's amazing.
Right? But once he had the ball, I mean,
Something else.
then he was something else.
So, Uncle Yunus, he was basically, what you just say now, ahead of his time, because the modern footballer or attacker defends from high up the field.
Yeah.
And you're saying
High
George
press.
Best used to
Yeah.
do that already. So he was way above his time.
Yeah.
Because at that time you used to sit back and, it was a bit easier. But if George Best used to do it, I mean, this man was ahead of his time.
And also a rock
what
star
player,
footballer,
man.
right?
A rock star footballer. I mean,
rock star footballer.
But you say part of it was like
The
a
he was
Beatles,
like
right?
it was
a Beatle, a football Beatle.
Oh, man. George Best.
a character. And he gave Matt Busby a hard time. I mean, it was
Shame.
not easy to manage because of all his off-the-field issues, but just a brilliant, a genius in many ways.
We did a past and present segment where we spoke about George Best, and he played in South Africa for Shamrock.
He came here for a bit. Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, look at
Okay,
that.
wow,
that
man.
guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's off-field issues but I mean, on-field, he was
Yeah.
a dynamo.
Amazing.
Sometime in the late 80s, they did him and Dennis Law did a tour of South Africa where they were guest speakers at the Carlton Hotel, and we went.
And were you there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, man.
Brilliant. So, I mean, if you look back at the previous segment we did, Uncle Yunus, he speaks about the Carlton Hotel and the history he had going there to watch games. And now we know that George Best was there as well. So a lot of history out of the
Georgie
Carlton
was
Hotel.
there. Oh, amazing.
Uncle Yunus, now that you've got George Best, I mean, it's an amazing midfield already, man. Roy Keane, Brian Robson and George Best supporting.
I'm already getting a bit nervous here, man.
Uncle Yunus, who makes your right? Who finalizes that midfield for you?
David Beckham.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So Uncle Yunus, before you tell us, so we had our all-time 11 a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And my pick was none other than David Beckham. I loved him.
Look at this.
Oh man.
Yeah.
David Beckham.
I mean, just to say, just to sort of explain what we're missing now in the present Man United. The other day, Christian Eriksen put in this beautiful cross and Rashford scored.
Yes.
What a goal.
David Beckham used to whoop in those crosses for fun.
Exactly.
It
wasn't out of the ordinary.
I mean, his work rate was there. His overall contribution, his free kicks. I mean,
A lot of people overlook David Beckham.
I think they overlook him. I think some of his, the whole glamour around his media and publicity, I think it overshadows his ability as a footballer.
And he also came out clutch in key moments.
Yes.
I remember, he got, England were down to Greece to qualify for the World Cup.
What a goal.
2002 World Cup. Beckham steps up at Old Trafford and bangs in a free kick from way out, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had moments like that for Manchester United as well.
And I mean, I've thought about this because the players that I'm leaving out to include Beckham. I mean, I'm leaving out the likes of Steve Coppell, who was a real favorite of mine.
Brilliant,
I loved Andrei Kanchelskis, even though he had a very brief career at Man United. But for me, David Beckham.
David Beckham. You know what? And this is for all you up and coming footballers out there. Every touch, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me, every touch of the ball, whether David Beckham was distributing or receiving, was magical. You could see when he touches the ball how he loves touching the ball. The relationship between him and the ball. So, Uncle Yunus,
Very strong in mind, and he believed in himself
100%.
to an extent that, and it's a quality that many sportsmen have, the self-belief issue. So whenever Ferguson would have a go at David Beckham would refuse to accept that he had a bad game.
So you stand up against Alex.
He would shake his head and say, I don't agree. I played well.
David Beckham. Self-belief that,
Yeah.
you know, what you believe, and that's what you put out.
Yeah, and so just a few things on Beckham. Just two things I want to bring up. One, he speaks about it. His dad was a massive Manchester United fan, and that's why his name is David Brian Beckham. His name after Brian Robson, similar
also-
to Brian Havana.
Yes,
Yeah.
I wanted to, it was still
So I
like,
met
yes.
Brian Havana in Dubai, and he gave a bit of a shout out to Gunning to Old Trafford.
Okay.
And his name is Brian Robert.
Robert Habera, eh?
Was it
Something, okay, you are some, but Brian.
But he was named after two Manchester United greats. One was Brian Robson,
Yes.
and the one was it's Eric.
Eric.
Brian Eric, and the one
Brian
is Eric
Eric
Cantona.
Cantona.
So he was named after
Wow.
the Brian Abena, which
Amazing,
is amazing.
man. Amazing.
So yeah, David Beckham, but his grandfather was a Tottenham fan. So he said on Christmas time you would get two T-shirts.
Yeah.
A United T-shirt as a youngster, a United T-shirt and a Spurs T-shirt. So in the morning, he used to wear his United T-shirt, but in the afternoon when he went to his grandparents, he had to wear a Tottenham T-shirt. So he was torn between them. And then secondly, he spoke highly about Ferguson's man management, and Ronaldo and Rooney spoke about it as well. When he got red carded in the '98 World Cup,
Yeah.
where he kicked out at Simeone,
Yeah.
you know, they were, people wanted to kill him, like
Yeah.
he was the English, the English.
Yeah,
fans. And Manchester United and Sir Alex Ferguson sort of covered him and kept that noise away from him, when he got back to Manchester United. And he always spoke highly about it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that him and Ferguson
Yeah.
sort of, mended their relationship. after
Yeah,
whatever.
sure. I mean, and Ferguson also knew when it's time to get rid of him.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, Ferguson would put Man United first.
And they asked Ferguson if he did it on purpose. He said, if you gave me that boot 10 times, and if I aimed for him, I would never be able to do it.
I'd never be
So
able
I
to-
just kicked out, and it happened to hit
It
Beckham,
happened.
So anyway, that's a
Brilliant.
story for another day.
Brilliant
So we've got a solid midfield line, in front of a very solid defense. Your two strikers up front, and this is going to be a tough one.
Tough one.
Many great strikers.
Not
to
because
choose
of
from.
who I'm including, but because of who I'm excluding. I mean, the hardest part is, leaving out some of these great players. But, obviously, Cantona has to be there simply because of the way I saw him, the way he could link play, his presence up front, it would be Cantona. And then with Cantona, I would have Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God.
So
That
I-
one hit me a bit off, but brilliant, Uncle Yunus.
So, I mean, it's about who you leave out. So imagine there's no
man.
Rooney there, there's no Mark Hughes, there's the Dutch two of Van Nistelrooy and Robin van Persie. I mean,
The little boy that cried out, to
and then
go to
also,
Manchester.
I mean, you're leaving out some of players that, came to United probably at the wrong
Dwight
time. but-
York, Andy Cole.
Dwight York, Andy Cole. I just wish Zlatan Ibrahimovic had come to United
A few years
a
earlier.
little bit earlier.
yes, I agree,
I think he was just perfect for Man United. But
100%.
it never happened. But
Wow.
And he backed himself, right? And that's what you say. These
Yeah.
great players need to back
no, they
themselves.
back themselves.
And-
And that's Cristiano Ronaldo. So people mustn't get very upset about Ronaldo because you must understand his mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, he has to believe in himself.
Of course, he's a winner, man.
You
He's
know,
a champ. Yeah.
so when he storms off, it's because in his mind,
He should
he
be
believes
contributing.
that he's still this great player, and he will not accept the realities
Yeah.
that he's slowing down, etc.
And I'm sure he'll be his biggest critic as well, right?
Sure.
On his performances. Because
Yeah.
great players also know
Yeah.
that they need to work on the game. So he'll be his biggest critic,
Yeah.
but he'll also back himself.
He'll always make- and we always say this also, Uncle Yunus and Ibrahim. And again, we're so passionate in the development of our football and the up and coming up stars and fans out there and youngsters out there. And I'm sure you guys can attest to this. The way Ronaldo, remember Ronaldo's human, just as us. He made a mistake. He walked off a few weeks ago, and just the way he handled it, Uncle Yunus. I mean, another player would go against Ten Hag, go against Manchester United. But what a man, a real role model. The way he came out and he apologized for what he's done, and for me, that's so important. When you know you make a mistake, but you need to be man enough to understand and just
Sure.
and apologize and move on. So Ronaldo,
Brilliant.
what a
So
player.
let's make, Abdul, if you just want to run this place
sure,
before we get
sure.
into Uncle Yunus's subs.
Awesome.
We've already locked down 2 subs,
Yeah,
but
we've
let's
already
get through
got
the...
Okay,
through the
so
team
guys, please, all ears, okay? All ears. So we've got in the polls, none other than Peter Schmeichel.
The Great Dane.
The Great Dane. Our centre-back, Uncle Eunice's centre-back partnership, we've got Paul McGrath and Gary Pallister. What a centre-back partnering. Right back, none other than Gary Neville.
Reliable Gary Neville.
Reliable Gary Neville. We've got Dennis Owen on the left. What a player. Love him to bits. In the center of the park, we've got Roy Keane, who's going to hold back a bit. And we've got Brian Robson, who's going to link up with our center-forward partnership. On the left-hand side, none other than the best, Georgie Best. Right? And on the right, Spice Boy himself, David Beckham. Love him to bits. Number 7, David Beckham. You got, Uncle Eunice, you got 4 number 7s.
So we're giving the number 7
4
shirt
number
to Uncle
7s.
Yunus.
Wow.
We'll toss a coin.
We'll toss it. Brilliant, brilliant. And up front, I have to do this here. And you know, Ibrahim always does this. And today, guys, I'm wearing a collar. Just in respect to none other than Eric Cantona. And next to Cantona, none other than the GOAT himself, Cristiano Ronaldo. What a top 11. And
So
I can do this.
it's not 4 number 7, it's 5 number 7.
5. It's 1, 2, 3,
Georgie
4.
Best won number 7
Yes.
at Manchester United.
Brian Robson.
Eric Cantona, Brian Robson,
Oh.
Cristiano Ronaldo, and David Beckham. 5 number
5.
7.
And you
Five
know,
number
Manchester United this week have been doing a number 7
Yeah.
advertisement. Am I
Yeah,
right?
it was amazing.
Wow, great. Now, before we go, Uncle Yunus, Ibrahim always does this here. So,
Who coaches
this
it?
team,
Yeah.
yes.
Before you get to
Who coaches this, I mean, well-oiled machine?
Yeah, look, I mean, United have had some pretty bad coaches as well.
Exactly.
And the present generation, they complain about David Moyes. They complain about Louis van Gaal. But in my era, you couldn't get worse than Dave Sexton.
Oh, Dave
It
Sexton.
was the most boring period in the history
And
of
I've heard
football.
horror stories
Okay.
about Dave Sexton
Yeah.
football, man.
No, it was just boring. Everything was boring for an exciting club like Man United to have a coach like Dave Sexton. But on the other extreme, I mean, we've been really blessed with 2 giants of the game, Alex Ferguson and Sir Matt Busby.
Oh, yes.
But I think that this is a very difficult lot to manage.
It is.
I mean,
Yes.
there's some strong personalities in
Yes,
there.
Very
Definitely.
strong. Right through
So
your
you're
team.
going to, you will need the hair dryer treatment.
Oh, yes.
So, it will have to be Alex Ferguson.
Sir Alex
I
Ferguson.
think Sir Matt would probably be too soft for these guys.
Sir Alex. Oh, amazing.
And then Uncle
Amazing.
Yunus, the bench. So we've locked in
Edwin van der
got
Sar.
Edwin van der Sar.
We've got Paul Scholes.
We got Paul
So we've got 3
Scholes.
more players to
Yeah.
balance out your team.
Patrice Evra would certainly be there.
Uncle Yunus,
Okay,
we had a poll on Instagram.
Yes.
Ooh, man, Uncle Yunus. I was
And it was
hoping you don't
between-
do because my man is still very
I'm
grumpy
very
with
upset,
me.
Uncle
He's
Yunus.
upset
because
with me, Uncle Yunus.
We had it out against Ashley Cole and Patrice Evra.
Yes.
And a lot of the Gunning to Old Trafford fans voted quite significantly for Ashley Cole. It was so much, it was 80-20 split.
Really?
Then they went for Ashley Cole over Patrice Evra. And Patrice Evra viewed the post, Uncle Yunus.
Uncle Yunus, when
So
we
they
saw
hurt
this,
me,
yeah,
you know.
our hearts just sank. Because I wish we could just turn it around. Patrice, we still love
We're
you,
so
my
sorry,
man. It wasn't our fault, man. Hey,
So
man.
Uncle
Yeah.
Yunus, if you had to, just jump in on the debate, and I'm not saying Ashley Cole wasn't a great player, and he's got the merits to choose it.
No, I would, in all fairness, I mean, I would set my bias aside for being a Man United fan. I would still go with Patrice Evra.
Brilliant.
I would still
Same.
go with Patrice. I respected Ashley Cole.
Yeah.
I thought he was a good player, but Patrice was. I mean,
And I think at the time when Ronaldo was in his peak, the only player that could handle him was Ashley Cole. You know, so you know the young Ronaldo, 2007,
Yeah,
yeah.
2008
Yeah.
Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Step of hope,
Okay, so
Patrice.
we've got Van der Sar, Scholes, Evra. 2 more spots, Uncle Yunus, to...
I would definitely put Mark Hughes on the bench.
Oh yes, Sparky.
I mean, when the game dictates that you need to punt the ball up front and you need a warrior there, and it's not
It's
really
Mark
going
Hughes.
your way, it's Mark Hughes. I mean, I still haven't seen a player that could take a ball from a goalkeeper's kick and bring it under control
Oh, brilliant.
with the control and strength of Mark Hughes.
It was brilliant. And he came good in many moments for
Yeah.
Manchester United as
Yeah.
well.
So I mean, when you need to put up a fight, then that's the player you
Also had some clashes with Sir Alex.
Yeah.
So big personalities again.
One of the few players that left and came back and still made a success.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Oof,
The last spot now,
2, 3, 4, 5.
Oof.
Yeah, last one is a tough one.
And I guess I would bring Ryan Giggs. Just in case Bess decides to party all night and he can't stay in the next morning, then it would be good to have Ryan Giggs.
Ryan Giggs as an understudy.
Oh, amazing. Wow, this is beautiful.
Not to, just before Shady goes through the team, just the players you left out, it just shows the wealth of players that Manchester United had, man, through the years.
Yeah, but I mean, United have had brilliant players, but so have other clubs. And when you appreciate the game, it's important to look at across the teams and to admire talent. My favorite Premier League player is not a Man United player; it's a Chelsea player by the name of Michael Essien.
Oh, Uncle Yunus.
Almost a Manchester United player.
Yeah,
but no thanks to Peter Kenny.
But for me, I mean, there was in the Premier League era.
Michael Essien.
What a player! I admired that player. I just thought.
And Uncle Yunus, like you, our man here, Ibrahim, one of his favorite players, also not from Manchester United,
really?
and he mirrored this player. Ibrahim loved Thierry Henry, and we said this on many times.
That goes without.
Ibrahim loved football, Uncle Yunus. We love United, but we appreciate football.
Ibrahim, when we played football together, the number 14 jersey, whether Ibrahim is there or not, it's for Ibrahim. Everybody knows that. Ibrahim even ordered Thierry Henry's soccer boots. So that's Michael Essien.
I don't blame him at all, because if we were talking about an all-time Premier League 11, Thierry Henry would make you. He would make that.
Oh, man, Abdul, if you just run through the team quickly.
Very quickly. Okay, so guys, we did it before, so we got in the polls. Okay, but before we run through, we've got Sir Alex Ferguson at the head of this, right? None other than Sir Alex Ferguson. Love him to bits. In the polls, Peter Schmeichel, our two centre-back partner, we got Paul McGrath, Gary Pallister. On the right, we've got Gary Neville, left back Dennis Irwin. In the centre-mid position, a really strong centre-mid position, Roy Keane, and partnering him, Brian Robson. On the left, again, only the best, George Best. On the right-hand side, again, like I said earlier, Spice Boy, David Beckham, and up front, Eric Cantona, Vava Voom, and the GOAT Cristiano Ronaldo. And the bench, guys, the bench is, solid. We've got Edwin van der Sar, Paul Scholes, Patrice Evra, Mark Hughes, and Ryan Giggs.
It's a nice balance.
I have a question for our Manchester United supporters. I'm also, you guys all know my admiration for all the teams, and especially now Manchester United. And I said it live, okay? So, Ibrahim and Uncle Yunus, tell me, this beautiful team, if you guys have to put them, let's say, in a modern season, how well do you think this team will do?
Fighting against a
Klopp.
With Ferguson in his prime, managing these players in their prime.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think great players will always be great, but, there's also how they adapt to the modern era.
True that.
There's a couple of players in that team that... so Paul McGrath answered that question in an interview recently. Okay. They asked him how does he think he would fare in the modern game, and he says he doesn't think he would do well at all, simply because his game was built on hard tackling, and he says almost all his tackles would be a foul today. So that's one example of a player. Dennis Irwin was a solid defender, contributed from a withdrawn role, very rarely ventured up. So in the modern game, some of these players may not necessarily be suited to the modern game.
Okay, that is brilliant.
Brilliant.
I love the answer.
Yeah, everyone says their team will win the league. So
everybody says, everybody says my team's going to win the league. So this hit me up. And I was going to go, yes, Uncle Yunus, this team wins the league. So brilliant stuff.
Brilliant. So guys, amazing stuff to have Uncle Yunus here sharing his all-time Manchester United 11 and giving us some insights into his thinking around the Glazers and the development that Manchester United need. Uncle Yunus, before we end the session, it's the 55th anniversary of our small town, Roshni. And Uncle Yunus is doing an amazing project, pulling together a photo book of memories for our town. Uncle Yunus, if you want to just give our audience a little bit of what you're doing and when can we expect to see this book?
Well, I mean, I've disappointed many people because I've moved the launch date a bit, but I think the realistic expectation, even though it will be ready for launch in December, is that we avoid December and we look at possibly January to launch it. The book's almost done. It's now going through the editing phase, 13 chapters. Sport is the biggest chapter in the book.
Amazing.
You know, and in the sports section, football is obviously the most prominent, with of course Verenigde Old Boys taking up a lot of space in that book.
That's amazing.
You know, and even the teams from Everton, etc. You know, it's a celebration of all the great things that we've witnessed in this town. Although it's a 55-year pictorial history, it goes back to the early 1900s. So it's really a 120-year history. You know, the origins of the community is covered extensively as well. It's a coffee table book. It's a large A3 size coffee table book. It's 350 pages, so it's quite a book.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
Yeah.
And Uncle Yunus,
I can't wait.
does Guiding to Old Trafford make it into your book? I mean, maybe you surprise us. Maybe don't give us the answer.
If you noticed earlier, I asked for a photograph to be taken, which I've captured on my own phone. And the purpose of that picture is that I'm hoping to squeeze it in.
Oh, that would be
this
nice.
is
That
so
would be
amazing.
nice.
They made, here made.
Yeah,
Here made.
exactly.
So on a, wow. What a segment. Uncle Yunus.
I mean, fans, we'll keep you guys updated
Yeah,
when the book is ready. And Uncle Yunus, if you don't mind, when you do the launch, if you allow us, you know, we could come there and just do a small snippet that we can get onto our channel as well.
You must do
highlight
that.
it. That will be amazing.
You must do that.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So
Perfect stuff.
yeah, also Uncle Yunus, we whenever we close the set, we do this and we want you to join us today.
Sure.
On 3, 2, 1, we're gonna do We Are Gunning to Old Trafford.
Perfect.
Uncle Yunus, you good?
Sure.
Ibi, you good?
100%.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, and we are
Gunning to Old Trafford.
Thank you guys. All the best. Bye bye.